So reconceptualists push past developmental refrains by interrogating them and unsettling them. So this post-developmentalism does not necessarily deny children's development, but more so it complicates and interrogates it. So it's a move from relying only on developmental discourse to understand learning, gender, ability, by interrogating the social conditions which create affordances and limitations within that. So it's a push past the individual child to consider more the social and political conditions which create the child in the first place. So in this sense, childhood is constructed. So it intentionally makes room for other perspectives that are more useful for illuminating aspects of children's subjectivity. And drawing on the article by Vintimila, Kuman, Qatar, and Land, and Pasini Ketchabal this week, they say that development gives education a sort of banister to hold on to without questioning our reliance on it. And with regard to curriculum reform, seminal reconceptualist theorist William Pinar argues that one element, that is the structure of education, cannot be cast as the key contributor to educational accomplishment. Pinar takes a critical look at curriculum using queer theory, which is a branch of feminist theory which deconstructs common assumptions about gender, race, and class and sex, to explore the racialization of power and question who is making decisions education, and beyond that, what are the conditions that create the possibilities for some to benefit here? So Pinar recognizes that schools have been configured as ahistorical, as a neoliberal concept, and its spaces are defined as a sort of blank slate. So Pinar critiques his predecessors from articulating reform in terms of structure, of the broader needs of society and the economy. However, attending to these needs quickly turns to generalizations that continue to fall back on the dominant Euro-Western system. It's a sort of well-oiled machine in this sense, as he argues. And Linda Tuhiwai-Smith, an Indigenous Maori scholar from New Zealand, speaks about this when she says that the West has archival rules of practice, which the West itself cannot necessarily describe, because it operates within the rules and they're taken for granted. So the state functions in ways which allow small shifts and transformations to happen without changing the archival structure itself. So in response, she moves toward decolonization. Reconceptualist early childhood scholar Veronica Pasini-Ketchabal, one of the authors of the article this week, has written extensively on immigration in early childhood, and critiques the conception of Canada as a welcoming multicultural country. She considers how it is that the state actually creates migrants. So she spoke about the phenomena, the migrant as a phenomena, how it is that it becomes a problem to deal with. So in Canada, the state is assumed as a sort of benevolent manager of immigrants, a neutral palette to accommodate the colors of many people. However, perhaps it may not be this simple if we're taking a post-structural reconceptualist lens to interrogate those systems. Broader imperialisms are more than merely markers of territory. They're structures of the state that create and recreate subjects. So these markers of territory are performative, much like the language of reconceptualist theory. They're not static. These things contribute in the creation of assumptions. So when thinking about the functions of the state and education, it's easy to see that the system is not broken. The system is fully functioning. So in this vein, Pinar argues that focusing on what happens in schools is not how we cultivate change. Changing routines, activities is not enough if we're still only focusing on the individual child developing. To do so would be to perpetuate a technological modernist view of social change. He says that altering curricular content or tweaking classroom organization is not effective. It's like trying to fix a malfunctioned engine by only repairing or replacing a few parts. He questions, what if the problem is the engine itself? So in our text, it's argued that psychology is a discipline which underpins the ideals of the neoliberal state and reinforces the categorical mechanisms and rationalization of Western science and capitalism that got us here in the first place. So to simply look for a symptom within that and treat it as such is to ignore the complexities at play and perpetuate the misogynistic veil of colonialism via education. So we can notice these discourses at play in our work in early childhood spaces, especially with children who have challenging behaviors. There is an assumed practice which treats the immediate behavior with sticker charts or consequences when children act out to solve a problem, but only for a moment. These practices are easy to implement, they're accessible, such as self-regulation. An educator can take them on easily. However, they seem in some ways superficial in that they only are skimming the surface of very complicated and multifaceted issues. The conditions which position this child as behavioral in the first place. The conditions. Yet from a reconceptualist perspective, this problem would not be situated or lie in the individual body. If subjectivities and individuals are manifestations of social discourses mediated through the human, through the child, then we need to interrogate social discourse and dominant stories that create the conditions where subjecthood is created. So when thinking about educational change and theories that inform our thinking, to ignore the deeply complex neoliberal agendas that create the construction of schools as institutions of the state is to ignore educational experience. One becomes numbed to the bodily feelings of education and of learning. So this week, you're going to be looking at Group 3's chapter discussion, visiting with these lecture series, and you're also going to participate in your group's virtual collaboratory session. And you'll also be posting a week 6 response in the provocation forum by Wednesday at 11:55 p.m. So this week in your virtual collaboratory groups, I've posted a proposition for you to consider in your dialogue. So this week in your VC groups, each member will come prepared with one quote to discuss from the readings that draws attention to the tensions between developmentalism and pedagogy, as you've read in the articles this week. So consider, how do these theoretical orientations differ? Draw on quotes from the readings to support your group dialogue, and consider tensions between these two orientations to early childhood education. And then in your week 6 response on the provocation forum, you'll be putting into question early childhood education's reliance on child development as a taken for granted way to understand, enact, and create early childhood spaces. So in 150 to 200 words, drawing from the readings, make visible the refrains of developmentalism in early childhood. So making visible, what are those restrictions, what are those inhibitions that developmentalism ties us to? Yes, so today I'll have an open virtual office from 5 to 7 p.m. if anybody wants to pop in and ask any questions. And yeah, I'm looking forward to reading more of your responses on the forums, everybody. Thanks so much.